She leaned in across the table. Smiled. Not the kind of smile you give to a friend, but the kind that comes before a punch. They were live on national television. CNN studios, New York. The lights were hot, the air thin, and Donald J. Trump sat alone on the other side of the glass. Her voice rang out sharp and certain. "Mr. Trump, do you believe it's morally acceptable to deport students for having political opinions?" The crowd behind the cameras chuckled. She added, "Aren't you ashamed, sir?" Silence. For a moment, even the production crew forgot to breathe. The screen split, her face triumphant, his still. Trump didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't raise his hand or his voice, just stared. Right at her, right through her. 4 seconds. That's all it was. But in television, 4 seconds of silence is an earthquake. A man in the control room dropped his pen. Someone backstage whispered, "Uh-oh." The host leaned back, ready for a counterattack. But none came. Instead, Trump slowly tilted his head and said with a voice lower than the air conditioner hum, "You think it's brave to defend people who cheer when America bleeds." She blinked. He went on, "What you call freedom of speech, some call sabotage." The air turned cold. You could feel the shift in the room, from snickers to stillness, from arrogance to awareness. He didn't shout. He didn't curse. He just asked a question. And that's when it happened. A veteran in the audience stood up off camera. But we'll get there. Right now, what matters is this. That night, America didn't hear a speech. It saw a stare, and remembered why some men don't need to raise their voice. To shake the world. The clip went viral within minutes. But to understand why it mattered, we need to rewind the tape. Earlier that day, the headlines had already drawn blood. Trump targets students in new ICE sweep. Palestinian voices silenced under new executive order. Mainstream outlets flooded the zone. MSNBC called it ideological cleansing. The View ran a full segment mocking the move. Late-night comedians took turns calling Trump a coward afraid of college kids. And now here he was, seated alone on a stage built to shame him. No allies, no script, just Trump and a host who'd come to draw blood on live TV. She wasn't new. She was a seasoned interrogator in pearls and heels, the kind who called herself neutral, but never hid her grin when she landed a jab. "Sir," she began again before he could finish his water. "You're deporting foreign students not because they broke any laws, but because they voiced political opinions. Do you deny that?" She didn't wait for an answer. "This is America. You talk a lot about freedom, so tell me, how does silencing a 19-year-old Muslim girl square with that flag you wear on your lapel?" The audience murmured, soft but growing. Trump shifted in his chair. Not uncomfortable, not defensive, just waiting. And she pounced again. "You once said I love the poorly educated. Was that just a joke, or is this your way of making sure they stay that way?" A low laugh rippled across the studio. Someone off-screen snorted. The host smiled wider. She had him, she thought. But Trump didn't fire back. Not yet. Behind the scenes, the control room adjusted the split screen. They wanted her face big, his small. They wanted America to watch him squirm. And they waited. For a meltdown, a tantrum, a famous Trump explosion. But none came. Because this wasn't 2016. This wasn't a rally. This was something different. He let her speak. He let the crowd cheer her lines. He let the silence grow. Until it felt like a third guest on stage. That's when the assistant producer whispered to her earpiece, "Be careful, he's waiting for something." But she didn't listen. Or didn't care. She leaned in once more. Voice slower now, crueler. "Mr. Trump, if your own son had marched for Palestine, would you deport him too?" It was a trap. Cold, calculated. Designed not for truth, but humiliation. And for a flicker of a moment, Trump looked down. Not in shame, but in choice. A pause. The kind of pause that comes before thunder. The kind of pause that feels heavier than noise. He raised his eyes, and the camera caught it full frame. The stare. The stillness. The storm behind the eyes of a man who'd been hated, mocked, impeached. But not broken. For 4 seconds, he said nothing. Not because he didn't know what to say, but because sometimes you let your enemies speak just long enough to prove who they are. The crowd grew restless. The host's face tightened. She could feel it slipping the narrative, the control. And that's when he finally opened his mouth. But not yet. That moment comes in a bit, because before the answer, there had to be the silence. And before the silence, there was the setup. The trap they thought would break him. But they forgot one thing. Donald J. Trump doesn't play by DC rules. He doesn't take permission from the press. He doesn't beg for applause from people who despise the country he fights for. He just waits. And when he speaks, it's already too late for his enemies to stop what's coming. He could have lashed out. Everyone expected him to. That's what the cameras were hungry for, the classic Trump flare-up, the soundbite, the storm. But he didn't give them what they wanted. Instead, he blinked once, leaned forward, and in the calmest tone you've ever heard on a political stage, said, "Do you know who Wen-Ho Lee is?" The host furrowed her brow. A beat of silence. Then she shook her head. Trump continued. In 1999, Wen-Ho Lee was a scientist at Los Alamos. Chinese-American, worked on nuclear codes. One day the feds accused him of spying, said he was passing secrets to China. They threw him in solitary, shackled him. 9 months, no trial. He paused. The press called him a traitor. The same press sitting here today pretending to care about students. The host opened her mouth. He lifted a hand, not to interrupt, to hold space. They found nothing. Nothing. He was innocent. Another pause. He looked at her, and when he got out, you know what he said. He turned slightly to the audience. To the cameras, to the country. His voice softened. He said, "I still believe in America." Silence. Total. Then the twist. "I don't deport students for having opinions," Trump said. "I deport them when those opinions come wrapped in the flags of terror, when they chant death to America on taxpayer scholarships, when they burn our flag and call it academic freedom." He didn't yell, didn't pound the table. He just let the words hang. "Free speech isn't the freedom to destroy the house you're living in," he added. "Especially when that house feeds you, shelters you, gives you more than your own country ever did." The camera cut to the host. She was still smiling, but it was the kind you wear when you're losing the room. And the room was shifting. He looked around, saw the faces, felt the tension unwind into something new. Awareness. "They tell you I'm against free speech," he said. "But ask yourself this, who's really silencing who?" Then he nodded once. "Remember Wen-Ho Lee? The system crucified him, and he still believed in this country." The host tried to regain ground. "But surely, sir, you see the danger in conflating." He raised his hand again, this time firmer. "There's a difference," he said, "between protest and betrayal." The air was electric now. The audience, quiet. Not because they were silenced, but because something in them was listening. The host leaned in again, but the energy was different now, less confident, more cautious. She tried to wrestle the frame back. "Mr. Trump," she said, her tone edging toward scripted outrage, "are you suggesting that dissent is betrayal, that America only belongs to those who agree with you?" Trump didn't react right away. He let her words echo. Then calmly he responded, "No, I'm saying America belongs to those who believe in it, not those who march under its roof while waving the flags of its enemies." The crowd didn't cheer. Not yet, but they listened. The host pressed on. "What about students who criticize American foreign policy? Are they next? Should we deport people for quoting Chomsky?" He looked at her, and for the first time in the interview, he smiled. It wasn't smug. It wasn't cocky. It was something else. Something colder, sharper. "I've never deported anyone for quoting Chomsky," he said. "But I draw the line when they celebrate the murder of innocent people, when they chant the slogans of Hamas, when they threaten Jewish students in dorm halls and call it activism." He paused, then added, quieter, "My mother didn't raise me to tolerate that. And neither should this country." Then it happened. A voice from off-camera, low, weathered Southern. "I served in Fallujah," the man said. The camera swung around. He stood in the audience, Gray hair, VFW cap, jacket zipped to the throat. I served 2 tours. My son served 1. He goes to Columbia. He tells me there are posters in the hallways calling for resistance against America. The room froze. I didn't watch men die so their classmates could cheer for their killers, the vet said. I didn't come home so my country could bend over backward to people who hate it. Then he looked at Trump. Thank you, sir, he said, for saying what nobody else will. Applause. Not roaring, but steady, earnest. From the back row to the front. The host tried to recover, tried to cut to commercial. But Trump wasn't finished. He turned back to her. You call it dangerous, he said. I call it drawing a line. His voice deepened. They mock us for protecting our country. They call us fascists for guarding our borders. They cry free speech while silencing everyone who disagrees. Then another twist. He pulled out a letter, folded, slightly wrinkled. He didn't read it aloud. He held it up. A Gold Star mother gave me this last week, he said. Her son was killed by a roadside bomb in Afghanistan, built with funding traced back to Iran. He paused. She said, They told me my son died for democracy. But when I turn on the TV, I see kids chanting for the people who killed him. Trump didn't cry, but his voice broke just enough for the room to feel it. He folded the letter, slid it back into his coat. You think I care what this network says about me? He asked. A beat. I care what she thinks. The host sat back, deflated. Nothing left in the tank. And Trump he stood. Not to storm off, not to grandstand, just to finish. He looked at the audience, then into the camera. If believing in your country makes you controversial, then so be it. He didn't raise his voice, but it landed like thunder. Applause swelled again, this time louder, longer, real. Not everyone clapped, but enough did to change the temperature of the entire show. He didn't wait for a sign-off, didn't nod to the host. He just turned, walked off set, leaving a silence thicker than a Sunday sermon in Mississippi. They say power is loud, but sometimes it whispers. And that night, Trump didn't need a mic to be heard. After he left the stage, they cut to commercial. Fast. Too fast. Producers scrambled. The host sat motionless, blinking, her smile gone. But in living rooms across America, people weren't thinking about ratings. They were thinking about what he said. Or more precisely, what he didn't say. Because it wasn't the speech that shook them. It was the stillness, the stare, the silence that came before the line. You think it's brave to defend people who cheer when America bleeds. It wasn't rhetorical. It wasn't clever. It was righteous. There's a difference. Somewhere in Kansas, a widow poured herself another glass of iced tea. Somewhere in Texas, a retired trucker turned down the volume and sat still. Somewhere in Staten Island, a Gold Star mother whispered finally. And somewhere in a dorm room, a young man who once called Trump a dictator opened YouTube and didn't click away. Because the truth didn't come with fireworks. It came wrapped in something rarer conviction. Trump didn't offer apologies. He offered boundaries. And in a country where everything feels blurry, where morals are now gray areas and justice is nuance, he did the one thing most politicians fear most. He drew a line. Not with hate, not with fire, but with principle. He didn't say, I hate Muslims. He didn't say, silence all critics. He said, you don't get to live in a house while setting fire to the floorboards. And that made sense to people who build houses, to veterans who bled for them, to immigrants who worked 3 jobs to get 1 foot inside the door, to parents who pray their kids will grow up in a country that still has lines worth defending. You don't have to like Trump, you don't have to vote for him. But that night, you had to listen. Because beneath the politics, beneath the flash, was something older, something we don't hear much anymore. Dignity. The kind that doesn't swing signs. It just stands still and lets you decide what kind of country you really want. 4 seconds. That's all it took. 4 seconds of silence. And the entire country leaned in. No shouting, no slogans. Just one man sitting still, eyes locked, refusing to blink while the world told him to back down. You might not remember what the host's name was, but you'll remember that stare. Because in a time where everyone screams over each other, silence spoken from strength cuts deeper than noise. It's easy to mock, easy to throw labels, to call him dangerous, divisive, unfit. But ask yourself something. Who's really dangerous? The man who defends your house or the ones lighting the matches? Who's really divisive? The one drawing a line or the ones pretending none should exist? And who's really unfit? The man who refuses to betray his country's values or the media that mocks him for trying. This story, this moment, isn't about politics. It's about courage. It's about a man who could have cracked, but didn't. Who could have barked back, but chose to speak slower than thunder. And it's about a truth no headline dares to print. That sometimes the most patriotic thing you can do is tell the ungrateful no. So if you felt it, if that silence meant something to you, if you're tired of watching people spit on the very country that gave them everything, then share this. Not because it helps Trump, but because it helps the idea of America. An America that doesn't apologize for standing tall. An America that doesn't whisper its values. An America that looks you dead in the eye and says, "Enough. Thank you for listening. Thank you for remembering." And if you truly believe that this country is still worth fighting for, then don't scroll past. Tell someone, because sometimes all it takes to change everything is 4 seconds of silence, and one voice strong enough to break it.